Imagine standing on a hill in southeastern Turkey 12,000 years ago. There are no cities anywhere on Earth, no writing, no wheel, no pottery, no metal tools. Most of humanity is still wandering in small bands, chasing herds, gathering wild grain, sleeping under the stars. And yet, on this one hill, something impossible is happening. Dozens of people are hauling multi-ton limestone pillars across the landscape, carving them with images of foxes, scorpions, boars, and vultures, and raising them into massive stone rings. This is Göbekli Tepe, and it should not exist, not yet, not according to everything we thought we knew about how civilization begins. For over a century, archaeologists believed the story went one way. First, humans settled down. They domesticated wheat and barley. They tamed animals. They built villages, and only once farming could feed large, stable populations did people have the time, the organization, and the surplus food needed to build temples and monuments. Religion, in this old story, was a luxury, something that came after civilization as a kind of reward for finally getting comfortable. Göbekli Tepe blew that story apart. When German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt began excavating the site in 1995, he expected to find another ordinary Neolithic settlement, maybe with some interesting stone tools. What he found instead left him stunned. Beneath the earth were enormous T-shaped pillars, some standing over 5 meters tall and weighing as much as 10 tons, arranged in circles, decorated with intricate carvings of wild animals, and crucially, there were no signs of houses, no hearths for daily family life, no evidence of long-term habitation. This wasn't a village, it was something else entirely, a place people came to, gathered at, and built, but did not simply live in. And then came the number that changed everything. Radiocarbon dating placed the oldest structures at Göbekli Tepe to around 9600 BCE. That's roughly 11,500 years ago, nearly 6,000 years before Stonehenge, and predating the invention of pottery, the wheel, and even writing by thousands of years. Most staggering of all, it predates the widespread adoption of agriculture in the region. The people who built this site were, by all evidence, still hunter-gatherers. So here is the question that has haunted archaeology ever since. How did hunter-gatherers, people without permanent villages, without domesticated crops, without draft animals, without metal tools, manage to quarry, transport, and erect stone pillars weighing as much as a small truck? The pillars were carved using nothing but flint tools, then dragged, likely using ropes, wooden sledges, and sheer coordinated manpower from a quarry located a few hundred meters away. Some estimates suggest it could have taken hundreds of people working together to move and raise a single one of these giants. That kind of labor doesn't just require muscle, it requires planning, it requires leadership. It requires people who were, at least temporarily, willing to set aside their nomadic wandering and cooperate on a shared project bigger than any one person could imagine. Klaus Schmidt came to a radical conclusion, one that flipped the old story on its head. What if it wasn't farming that led to religion and monument building, but the other way around? What if the need to gather, to build something sacred together, to honor whatever gods or spirits or ancestors these people believed watched over them, is what first pulled scattered hunter-gatherer bands together in large numbers? And what if it was that very gathering, feeding hundreds of workers for weeks or months at a time, that created the pressure to figure out how to grow reliable food supplies nearby? In this version of the story, the temple didn't come after civilization, the temple helped create it. Walk closer to those pillars, and the carvings themselves seem to whisper a language we can't quite translate. Foxes prowl across the stone, scorpions raise their tails, vultures spread their wings over what some researchers believe may be headless human figures. hinting at now-forgotten funerary rituals, sky burials, or beliefs about death we can only guess at. Some of the tallest pillars have arms carved along their sides, hands meeting at the front, almost as if the stones themselves are meant to represent beings, ancestors or gods, standing silently in the circle. We don't know their names, we don't know their stories. We only know that someone, 11,000 years ago, cared enough to carve them in stone and haul them across a hillside. Perhaps strangest of all is what happened next, or rather, what didn't happen. At some point, for reasons still debated, the people of Göbekli Tepe began deliberately burying their own structures. Layer after layer, they filled the stone circles with rubble, animal bones, and soil, entombing the pillars they had worked so hard to raise. Then they built new circles nearby, smaller, less elaborate, as if something about the world, or their beliefs, or their community had changed. Eventually, around 8000 BCE, the site was abandoned altogether, buried under centuries of sediment, until it looked like nothing more than an unremarkable hill. That, ironically, is exactly what preserved it, because it wasn't looted, farmed over, or built upon for thousands of years. Göbekli Tepe survived in extraordinary condition, waiting patiently under the soil for someone to finally look closer. When Klaus Schmidt first grasped what he'd uncovered, he reportedly said that either people had found a way to build monumental temples before farming existed, or archaeologists would have to rewrite the entire timeline of human civilization. As excavation continued, revealing not just one but multiple stone circles, with ground-penetrating radar suggesting many more still lie buried and unexcavated beneath the hill, it became clear this wasn't a fluke, it was a pattern, a tradition, a place returned to, rebuilt and reimagined across many generations. Today, Göbekli Tepe forces us to sit with an uncomfortable, thrilling possibility that the deepest roots of human civilization may not lie in the practical business of feeding ourselves, but in something more mysterious. Our drive to gather, to believe, to build something greater than ourselves, and to mark our place in a universe we didn't fully understand. Long before the first city rose, before the first king ruled, before the first word was ever written down, a group of hunter-gatherers stood on a windswept hill in Anatolia and decided that some things were worth building in stone. And in doing so, without knowing it, they may have lit the very first spark of the world we live in today.